Hello class, welcome to another week of art club videos. So last week we basically went through how to create book covers, different ideas of creating book covers, how we can do this, different concepts. I explained two examples to you, and I talked about how color can affect your book cover, like what to add, how to tell a story through art, how to use art to explain the story on the book cover. Um, this week, we're going to continue in that. I'm going to show you two more examples that are slightly different from the two examples we saw. And the only reason I'm doing that is because I want you guys to actually know that you have options in how you want to create your book covers. There are different ways to do it, there are different fun ideas. And I want you guys to really open up and be creative when you're creating these. So I'm going to show you some more examples, so stay tuned. The title of this book cover is called The Time Machine. So when you think of a time machine, the first thing that comes to mind is technology, an actual time machine, or maybe someone working on a time machine, someone going into a time machine, something including the past, something including the future. So this book cover is kind of showing that in a way. So even though, we spoke about that it's showing it can show the future or the past, this book kind of seems like it's something scary maybe. It can also be that this is a time machine in a spooky time, or maybe that this time machine can take you far away. What I do like about this book cover though is that it has that green light coming from the moon. And when I say what's special about the green light coming from the moon is that usually when you do watch shows with a time machine, there's always this magical or mysterious green light coming somewhere. So if you've ever watched a show with a time machine, you'd realize that sometimes when the time machine is getting started up or when people are doing experiments, there's always green smoke or a green mysterious look. So even though the book says the time machine, it could mean multiple different things. It could be a happy story, it could be a sad story, it could be an interesting story, it can be even an informative story, maybe it can be a story the time machines are real, or maybe it can be showing you how to create your own, play toy machine. But looking at the book cover, you can tell what the story is actually about. And when you're making your own book cover, that's the whole motive. So right away, we can already tell that this story probably is something spooky. So the first thing that I realized was the green light coming from the moon. So maybe in the story, every time someone does use the time machine, there is a flash of green light coming from the moon or coming from the sky. But if you realize very closely, there are two white lines, two white circles, white lines around the moon. So this may also be a planet. But again, it indicates that maybe in the story, whenever the time machine goes off, green light or something comes from the moon and hits the time machine, or maybe green light goes up to the moon when from the time machine, and that probably does something to the moon, to the sky, to the universe, and switches the time and changes the time or the time for that person. So now, next to the actual title, The Time Machine, you realize that there's two almost, I would say, spooky characters standing next to the title. So that could probably be that either the story is about two villains creating the time machine for bad, or it could just be that those two villains are the reason that they needed a time machine in the first place, or that somebody is creating a time machine or making a time machine and the villains are trying to stop it, or that heroes are going back in time to try and fix whatever happened, and whatever bad that did happen probably happened because of the two villains that we're seeing. So when it comes to an art perspective, what is really great about this cover is that it's showing metal. So it's showing wheels, and it's showing that this is what the time machine is made up of. So it's basically, we already know that a time machine is made up of technology. If you've ever watched any shows, you would know that whenever somebody's building a time machine, they usually use like a lot of technology, or they're using a lot of tools, and these are kind of what you would use, these type of metals, and to create a time machine. And so instead of drawing a time machine, they decided to create tools and these metals that represent what a time machine would look, instead of just drawing a boring old time machine. So when you're creating your art, you can think of something like that. Instead of going straight to the point, you can create art that represents whatever you're trying to do. So what's something great to realize about this is that even though these tools and these parts, I should say parts, that we're seeing underneath the word time machine, even though these tools and parts are in an orange brown color, even though it's behind the title, it's showing that this is what's standing out, that okay, this is about a time machine. So when you're doing book covers, you have to look at things like that. So you have to look like what the focal point is. So because we do have these characters, and we do have things going on in the background, and maybe we have things going on with the moon, and we have things going on with the city, remember that the focus is the time machine. Of course, we already have the big word, the time machine, to indicate that that is what's happening, but that this book is about a time machine. But the fact that they did put the actual parts and tools and wheels in a bright brownish orange color compared to the dark background, it's kind of showing that okay, this is emphasis that this is definitely about a time machine. So we're seeing the parts in this brownish orange color, and also it's at the forefront of the cover. It's the first thing you notice, not only because of the color, but it was drawn at the front. And this artwork was also drawn in a perspective aspect. So, we've gone over perspective already. The parts are at the forefront, and you're using perspective because now the city is in the background. So you have the city in the background, and the city is drawn in a way that it seems like people are walking down towards the area where it does say time machine. So the background has green, it has the mysterious green color that we talked about, it has that black color that we talked about. So the sky is basically green, the sky is basically dark. So maybe wherever this is, there's no lights. So maybe the time machine did take all the light in the city. Maybe the time machine used up so much power that it out all the lights in the city. And as you can see, you see 3 green people walking towards. Maybe those people aren't green, but they're glowing in the dark because of whatever fumes came off of the time machine. So the importance of me explaining this is that you should get as creative as you can with your art cover, because there are different ways that you could have possibly made a book cover about a time machine, but this artist chose to do it this way just so it's a little bit creative. So, or maybe the moon is also the only thing that is giving the color. So there is a green flare coming from the moon. So maybe because of this, the whole city is reflecting that green flare, and that's why everyone sees green. And then, as I said, the city's in the background, and then you have the two villains. The two villains, their eyes are green too. So it kind of gives you this mystery. So it's green, it's black, they're villains standing next to the actual time machine. That's a very good observation too, is that the villains are standing next to the parts of the time machine. Maybe they even messed up the time machine because these are parts of the time machine. So maybe the villains are the ones that took the time machine apart. So it's a very good composition. That's something very important to remember when you're creating any art, creating any book cover, is where you place each item. Obviously the moon would be in the sky, but in terms of the perspective view and where you place everything, the tools are forefront, the sky's at the back. So this is a very good way to put together everything, because when you are creating art, you do always think of the different elements, the different pieces, the different parts, the different drawings, and where they're gonna be. So this is a good example of how they were specifically placed at different parts of the book cover, different plates of the artwork. A very good indication of this piece too is that even though this has nothing to do with the actual book cover, it's in a frame. So if that's something you want to do, I would do that. And so even though we're creating a book cover, it's gonna be art. So if you feel like, you're creating a book cover and you don't actually wanna fold the paper and make it into a book to look like a book cover, you can create it on a piece of paper and just make it art, because we're creating art anyways. This is just a different way and a fun idea for us to think out the box of how we are creating art. So I'm going to show you guys one more. So this one was based off of the book Harry Potter. Now the reason I'm showing you this art piece is because this art piece was done in black and white, and I believe that the actual cover of the book may not be exactly like this, but even if it is, let's just examine the different parts and the different pieces of this book cover. So first thing you notice that really stands out, obviously, is gonna be either the snake or the fact that the title is green and the background is in sketches. But again, the reason I did want to show you guys this book cover in particular is because it is sketched and it is in black and white. So it's a drawing, and this drawing was created using pencil. So let's start from the back. So the back, we see a castle, and it's very well done because it seems as if the light is shining from the castle. So this kind of indicates that maybe that this is their location of where this story is taking place. So the scary part about this book cover, and was also done well, is a snake coming around in front of the knife. So this is basically showing that there's something to be scared of. Maybe the snake is gonna sneak up on them. If you have watched Harry Potter, I'm not necessarily explaining what happens in Harry Potter, but just of how an artist can think outside the box. So if you're looking at this, you never watched Harry Potter, you're like thinking, oh, that snake is probably mysterious. Or you can also probably think that the snake is on their side, and the reason you're thinking this is because the snake's head direction is going in the same direction as them. So, of course, at the forefront of the piece is Harry, and again, because this is obviously the lead character of the book. So the other pieces I have showed you, they look really artistic, and you have to kind of wondering what the artist was thinking when he was making it. Whereas this piece, it kind of goes straight to the point because they put the main character at the front of the book, and then you see behind him are the two other main characters, I would say. So in the show and in the book, they are his sidekicks. So I feel like it was done really well that they had him standing out, and then they had them standing behind him. And they also show a knife a sword, I'm sorry, being placed in front of Harry, the main character. And again, when you're looking at an artist's perspective, this could be symbolism for something. So just like how I just told you, the wheels and the parts were probably symbolism for an actual time machine, so the artist didn't have to actually draw a time machine. The sword being placed right in front of Harry and directly below the snake probably indicates that he's protected and that he has some form of powers that's protecting him from actually being hurt, or he has some form of powers that can help him beat evil. So that is a great way to look at this. The fact that the artist did put the sword in front of them, it just shows that, they're being protected. And if the snake is not on their side, the sword is over them, and then the snake is in front of the sword, which means the sword is probably protecting them. And I think this does indicate that the sword is protecting them, because if you realize there's a hand that's not theirs holding the sword. So the reason I'm explaining this once again is so you can kind of understand how artists think. So if you are reading a book, or if you're gonna draw your book cover based on a book you've written yourself, you can use your storyboard, your script from your storyboard, or you're looking at a regular book that you've already read. These are ideas to think of. So if your book is similar to this, where somebody is protecting the main character, this is a good idea to use. So, the sword is in front of the main character, almost protecting him from any evil. This is a great way to show that without actually writing it out, to show that, that he's being protected. And if you look at the top, you have somebody looking down on him. Again, if you watched or read Harry Potter, you know who that is. But let's just talk about it like it's just a regular story. So if I'm looking at this, I'm thinking that the person at the top, he has a beard on, he has the glasses on, so it indicates that he's older. So to me, it shows that there's somebody looking over him. And again, that's another way to tell a story using art. That's the focus, is that you're using art to tell this story. So below him, again, if you've read the book, that those are his parents below him. But that's also a good concept to show that was him when he was younger with his parents. This is him now. It's kind of showing, maybe this book cover was inspired just by showing that the main character is being protected, because you're seeing him snuggled with his parents at the bottom, you're seeing the knife over and protecting him, and then you see in the corner a tiny little reindeer, and the reindeer seems like it's glowing because of the shading techniques they used. So the reindeer could probably represent that he's being watched over, could probably represent light, and then you have the older person staring at him and looking down at him. So again, these are just great examples that you can use to create your book cover. So now when creating your book cover, again, I would say that you can just do this as art, but if you want the full experience and the fun of it, you can get a piece of paper, fold it in half, and start your book cover at the front. In the next video, I will show you different ideas of fonts that you can use when creating your book cover, because as you see in this picture, in this drawing, the font kind of stood out. So I will explain that in the next video.